We tried a possession of marijuana case in front of a jury. I guess it was about 3 months ago now. It was an odd case. So law enforcement came out to a call for like a well check. My client's mother was babysitting, I don't know, a bunch of kids in the house, and somebody had heard something and called the police, and for some reason our crime suppression team answered the call. To this day, I don't know why. But they show up and they do that, oh, we smell marijuana. We want to search the house. Mama said, initially she said no, but then they were going to make her late for work. And so she said, well, fine, you can search. I don't want to wait around for you to get a warrant. So they start searching. Eventually she tells them there is marijuana in the house, and she takes them to a closet where they locate marijuana. When they talk to her, she tells them that it's not hers, that it's one of her son's. And so they leave and they say, okay, we'll have your son come confess and turn himself in, which was a mistake on their part. So my client doesn't live there. He was not there when they showed up. There was nothing connecting him other than what she said. And so I guess when she calls him and says you need to turn yourself, they want you to turn yourself in, he's like, well, why would I do that? They don't, they clearly don't believe it's yours, and they don't have enough evidence for me. And in fact, there was evidence that it actually belonged to someone else that we didn't get into or even get into in trial, but there was an alternate suspect, and who was also a relative and could have been who she was referring to. So law enforcement finally, they show up at Mama's house and say, okay, well, he didn't turn himself in, we're going to arrest you. And so she calls him, and he shows up and just basically says, and this was during like the height of COVID, and his mother was, I believe, in her 60s. And he says, well, you're not taking my mother and putting her in jail where she could potentially die. He says, I'll say whatever you want me to. And so they were like, well, are you saying this marijuana is yours? And he's basically, yeah, if it means my mom doesn't go to prison, yeah, that's mine, sure. And so they arrest him, and we go through the process. We're unable to work something out. I had actually proposed just, pleading to a marijuana charge, like a misdemeanor, possession charge. They turned it down. They wanted to go to a jury trial and test the marijuana to determine that it wasn't hemp. Hemp and marijuana are not zoologically. What is the word? They are the same plant, like the same species of plant, Cannabis sativa. The only difference between hemp and marijuana is that hemp is 0.03% THC, whereas legally in Georgia, marijuana is that same plant with 0.03% or more of Delta 9 THC, as opposed to Delta 8, Delta 10, Delta 11. So we showed up to court. They weren't prepared to prove that the substance was actually marijuana. And they didn't really have a connection, to show that the marijuana that they found at someone else's house actually belonged to my client. So we put on the trial. I cross-examined their detective, who admitted on the stand that he could not distinguish between hemp and marijuana. They look the same, smell the same. And then I had been talking to my client's mother, and obviously she did not want her son to go to jail. And in another misstep, the state did not call her as a witness. They had her there under subpoena, but they did not put her on the stand. So when they rested, we quickly did a motion for directed verdict, and then we rested, and we quickly got a not guilty verdict. Again, it couldn't prove who it belonged to, and more than they couldn't even prove that it was marijuana. But I think a lot of clients, when they come in, they're going to be like, well, they've got a confession, because he confessed obviously under duress, because he thought his mom was going to be jailed with other people who potentially had COVID in mid 2020. And then they've got marijuana, they thought. And so, that's a good example of one of these cases where you don't know until you actually let a lawyer look at it. Because as soon as he told me, he tells me about the confession, and then it's, well, sure, yeah, but would you have confessed would you have said any of this if, they weren't standing there with a warrant for your mother? Well, no, of course not. Once we actually got into it, what looked like an insurmountable case actually turned into a victory.